we can learn from the experience and leadership journeys of those who have contributed to our field. The purpose of this session is to inspire leadership, encourage active participation within ICBIS, LIASA, and the broader LIS community, and to reflect on how we can continue to strengthen our profession through collaboration and innovation. At ICBIS, we value the participation of every attendee. With that said, let's begin with a few house rules announcement. For the smooth running of the session, please keep your microphones muted when you are not speaking. Questions and comments are welcome, and you may type them into the Q&A box, or you'll raise the hand, and your contribution will be noted for discussion during the Q&A segment that will be facilitated by our Secretary, Chantel Clark. Please also note that this session is being recorded and will be available on the LIASA News YouTube channel. Registered guests will receive the link via email, and it will also be shared on our ICBIS social media platforms. Now, colleagues, it gives me pleasure to introduce our guest for today, Mr. Nazeem Hadi, our former LIASA president. Mr. Hadi's professional journey spans over 3 decades of dedicated service in the public library sector. Beginning his career in 1993, he has progressed through various roles, from assistant librarian and librarian to senior librarian, principal librarian, marketing and research officer, head, and currently he is the Senior Professional Officer for Acquisitions in the Collection Development Unit at the City of Cape Town Library and Information Services. Beyond his professional contributions, Mr. Hadi has played a significant leadership role within the Library and Information Association of South Africa, that is LIASA. He previously served as Western Cape Branch Chair from 2008 to 2010, and National Public Relations Officer from 2010 to 2012, before leading the association as the president, which was in 2021 to 2024. His tenure reflected a deep commitment to advancing the profession, promoting collaboration, and strengthening the visibility and impact of libraries in society. During this session, colleagues, Mr. Hadi will share his career progression, leadership journey, and the key moments that have shaped his path. Let's give him a warm virtual welcome. Over to you, Mr. Hadi.
Thank you very much, Mersha, and thank you for the warm welcome and the introduction, and thank you for everybody being here this morning. It's probably not my best week this week. I'm a bit under the weather, but we're going to get through today. I didn't want to disappoint Mersha. She's asked me to do this for quite some time. Her predecessor of ICBIS, Fatima, already asked me way back when she was the chair of ICBIS. So you can see it's been a long conversation, and I thought, let's just do it and get it over and done with, and let me not disappoint them again today. So if I look a bit under the weather, or I look like I'm going to fall off the chair, just know that today's I'm just a little bit off balance today, but I think we're going to get there. If you can go to the next slide, Mersha. So when Mersha sent me the kind of framework for what she wanted me to talk about today, one of the things was how you got into this profession of librarianship, and I've put on that slide one of the libraries that I had the privilege of actually working at, Valhalla Park Library. But it's not just that particular library. I think my association with librarianship started when I was really young. I didn't think about librarianship as a profession. I'm not one of those people who Like I've always wanted to be a librarian kind of people. But the one thing that I've always enjoyed, that has always resonated with me, that has always played a pivotal role, I think, in my life is the aspect of books. I've always loved books. I've always loved reading. And I'm one of those librarians that came into the profession because I loved reading. As a child, I loved to read fairy tales. I loved to have books with me. And as a child, though, I must say that I didn't have books around me all the time. I didn't belong to a library. And shockingly, I only joined the library when I was 17 years old. Was the first time I actually got a library card, despite the fact that I loved books and I loved reading. When that stage, when I got a library card, we had a mobile library that came every week um, to the place that I lived in. And it took me a while to kind of go there and actually get a library card. My sister actually got a library card before me. And that kind of spurred it on to actually go and get a library card myself. So this idea of books and reading was central to me becoming a librarian. When I was in matric and I thought about what I wanted to do, I actually wanted to become a teacher. It's the thing that actually interested me the most. And I kind of did the application really late and so kind of missed the boat. And then I had to think about, what do I actually want to do? Um, and thought about the many things that kind of interested me, and I always came back to books and reading. And that's how I got into thinking about, oh, maybe I actually could go and do a librarianship. Um, my parents were horrified, especially my mother, because she was like, who goes to do that? Why would you want to do that? And I kind of put those kind of comments aside and I went into librarianship. And needless to say, I think, like with many people, it's not quite what you think it's going to be when you start out. And if you look at the field of librarianship, back when I went into it, it's very different in a lot of ways today than what it was way back when. And so I went to if we can go to the next slide, Mersha. So in terms of my journey really with librarianship started at the University of the Western Cape. I went to the university, I enrolled for the B-Bibble, and it taught me a lot of things about librarianship, a lot of theoretical things. One of the things I realized when I started working was that it didn't quite prepare me for the workplace, but I was grateful for the grounding that it gave me in terms of librarianship. As an example, I hated cataloging. I'm sorry, Mersha. I hated cataloging and I hated classification. It was one of the most horrible things that I actually did in my career. And the funny thing is, when I actually got to do cataloging, I was grateful for the fact that I actually had a grounding in cataloging. And so I actually understood what it was that it required of me. And so when I look back on my university career and my degree, I'm grateful for what I actually experienced in doing that degree. And if we look at people, for me, leadership is always about people. There are people that influence you, there are people that have an impact on you, and there are people that structure your journey as you go through your career, whatever it might be, not necessarily librarianship. And so some of the people who played a pivotal role in my leadership journey for me was my lecturers, Professor Archie Dick, Dr. Sally Witbooi, Professor George Fredericks, Dr. Peter September. They were formative in forming the thought processes in terms of what librarianship meant, what the library profession was about, etc. And especially somebody like Dr. Archie Dick, he played a really central role for me in terms of shaping who and what I was as a librarian in those beginning stages. We had long conversations about books and reading and libraries and librarianship. And one of the things he always said to me was that librarians are shy people. And we used to have long conversations about this concept of librarians as shy people. And I think to a large extent, librarians are still very often shy people. I take my hat off to the librarians who are coming to the fore today, um, because a lot of them are not shy people. And I applaud that. But back in the day when I went into it, a lot of us went into it because we were kind of introverted people. And I think through my entire journey, I think one of the things that has always struck me is that I'm a very introverted person. It doesn't come naturally to me to walk into a room and work a room. I'm one of those people who will come in and stand against the wall and scope out what the venue looks like, and then have to draw up the courage to actually go and walk around the room and actually engage with people. And yet I ended up in places where um, it required me not to be introverted. It required me to actually be an introvert, be an extrovert. And that's part of leadership, is to find the role and the opportunities and the spaces for you to actually step up and say, I'm going to go for this. And that's an important part of starting a leadership journey, is to recognize those opportunities and to say, I am going to put myself out there, even if it is against my entire nature. Um, and so my journey kind of escalated from there. Um, when I did my initial undergraduate degree, I kind of had to think about, what do I want to do now? And I wasn't ready to be done with university, so I went and I enrolled for honors. Um, what was fabulous about doing something like that is that I was employed in the department as a research assistant, and that brought me into contact with so many other people, undergraduates. Some of them are still colleagues of mine, they're friends of mine, etc. In that time, I, for example, from a Liasa perspective, when I did my honors, I was in the same class as the first Liasa president, Ellen Tice, for example. And I met amazing people during that time. But by the time I was done with my honors, I was like, okay, I think I've had enough of studying, and now I need to go and work. My parents also needed me to go and work to earn money. Um, and so my actual career in librarianship, in terms of working career, started after that. The next year, I went to Adriaan's library. I got employed as an assistant librarian. Um, and it was an experience that I think shaped whatever happened after that. For years, for 4 or 5 years, I traveled with a train to University of the Western Cape. And one of the things that I always used to look out the train window, and I used to see these flats, and I was like, sure, it must be, not a great place to live in. And lo and behold, my first job at Adrianza was to actually get off at the train station, walk through those flats, to get to my workplace. It was unlike anything that I had ever experienced. I was a very sheltered child. I had a very sheltered childhood, and I went into this place that was a gang-infested area. There was lots of poverty. There was lots of crime. In this initial stages when I started working there, I heard my first gunshot. I got robbed on my way to work, but it shaped who and what I was in terms of my career as a librarian. It allowed me to be bold and to go out into the community and walk around in the community and engage people and principals and teachers and things that I'd never done before. Um, and, and one of the people that I think was instrumental in that was Nora Murat. Murat. So she was my first librarian in charge. And I think what I enjoyed about that experience, that it allowed me to explore the possibilities. And that's part of leadership as well, is for people to give you the scope to explore. So I think I was lucky in that sense, that I had someone who saw the potential and the possibilities and allowed me to do the things that I wanted to do. Then I moved on to Westridge Library, and one of the amazing things about libraries is that you meet all sorts of people in your life. And one of the people that I met at Westridge Library is my wife. Um, Sorry about that. So one of the people I met at Westridge Library is my wife. And so one of the things that can happen to you in your library journey is that you can meet your partner in a library. Um, and and in that space as well, I met other people that I think have had an impact on, again, I think who I was and who I was to become as a librarian. People like Shirley Jansen. Um, she was a hard taskmaster, but once you left that space where Shirley was, and I'd met her before when I was a student and I did my field work. Um, she she molded you, and once you left her tutelage, you knew what you had to do. People like Yunus Umar, who was very quiet as a leader, but still instilled things in you that I think lasted a lifetime. From there, I went to Valhalla Park Library as a librarian in charge, and I think one of the people that has been instrumental again, I think, in this leadership journey was Raina Epstein. People either loved her or hated her. I liked Raina. She was a straightforward person. She interviewed me once for a bursary, which I didn't get. And she was a really hard person to interview you. And in a couple of years, when she took me out, or when she interviewed me for the post at Valhalla Park Library, she said to me, "Remember back then when I interviewed you for that bursary?" And I was like, "Sure, you actually remembered me." She said to me, "You weren't ready then, but now I can see that you're ready." And that again, it has quite an impact on you as a person, as a librarian, for somebody to say that about you. Marlene van Zyl was the HR person, was a huge personality, I think, in my library life after that. She was a mentor. She was somebody who guided you in terms of people, in terms of leadership, etc. Um, one of the people that I met in my library journey was former President Nikki Crowster, for example. She was the librarian at my library when we eventually got a library in Strandfontein. She was the librarian in charge, and she showed me that you could build collections that, for example, that doesn't conform to the norm. And that what you do in terms of that collection and how you serve people, has you have the potential to shape people by the collections that you build. Um, I went to Haydenfeld Libraries as a principal librarian, and I had a couple of libraries under me. And from there, I went to marketing and research, which was a completely different role for me. That it wasn't in a library. It's the longest post that I've ever held in my career as a librarian. But I applied for the post. I got the post, and again, it provided me opportunities to do things that I think I would never have been able to do. My director, Nani Stein, for example, would throw these challenges at me, and you had to sink or swim. So the first time she said to me, one of the things you need to do is to have these service awards for the department. And I was like, okay, but who's going to MC the event? And she kind of looked at me and she said to me, well, you. And I was like, okay, I've never done this before. But one of the things I've discovered in this journey is that I love to stand in front of people and I love to talk in front of people. And in a lot of ways, not to kind of, blow your own horn, but it's something that kind of comes naturally nowadays, to be able to stand up in front of people and speak off the cuff about very many things. Then I came to kind of the role where I am now, initially as a professional officer. And from there, I moved on to being a head. So I had a number of libraries that was under me. And in this time that I was ahead, one of the important leadership lessons I learned, I think, was also when to walk away. So one of the things I had to do as a head was I had to instruct people on doing things. Obviously, they all reported to me, and I reached a point where I thought, I don't believe in the things that I have to instruct them to do. And so I had to make a choice, and I had to say, is this what I want to continue doing or not? And eventually I made the choice and I said, this is not what I want to do. This is not who I am. I don't feel good doing this. I love the people that I worked with, but I didn't like the job. And I think as a leader, one of the things in your leadership journey is to decide, what do I not want to do anymore? When do I walk away? And I think that's as important as walking into something. And so then I ended up in this post where I am now, and I've been for the last 8 years, as a senior professional officer acquisitions. And I kind of feel like I've come full circle. So I started off talking about how my journey was all about books and how I got into librarianship. And so now I'm in a space where it's all about books and collections, etc. And it kind of feels like a circle it's come full circle, and I feel like I'm in my happy place. Um, if you can move to the next slide, Masha. And so that's kind of my library career journey. So if I look at my Liasa journey, which in some ways dovetails that journey, I first got into Liasa in 1999. Ilse Swart was the chief librarian at Belleville Library. And I think also a great influence in how I think of myself as a librarian. She's the one who kind of she was a very forceful person. She had a very great personality, larger than life personality. And so one of the things she did was she said, you have to become a member. So I'd kind of heard about Liasa. Um, Colleagues would talk to me, friends would talk to me about it, but I'd never wanted to join necessarily until Ilse, who I think she was the membership secretary at the time in the branch. She sat me down and she said, "Okay, today here's a form. You're going to become a member." And I signed on to become a member of Liasa. And from there, I kind of didn't necessarily look back. The next, I think, really pivotal moment in my Liasa journey was my association with PACLI, the Public and Community Library Interest Group. So there was a national PAC League, and they were starting to roll out the possibilities of having PAC League in the branches. And so again, Ilse came to me and said to me, I want you to be part of this journey to start PAC League in the Western Cape. And we went around to these different libraries to look at what the possibilities are, what are people actually looking for if we were to start a PAC League in the Western Cape. Um, and and from there again, um, that journey started with PAC League, and it wasn't about looking back; it was about looking forward, about what we wanted to do. The next, I think, really pivotal moment for me in terms of my Liasa journey was the South African Library Leadership Project, SALP, which was under the auspices of Ujala Sadhguru, who was working in the Liasa office at the time, and she was project managing the SALT process. And so again, Liasa afforded me a lot of firsts. It gave me the first opportunity, for example, to travel. When I went for the interview for SALT, I had to travel from Cape Town to Joburg. I'd never been on a plane before. Once I got into SALT, it became a bigger journey when we went to the United States and the University of Urbana-Champaign, where we met people like Barbara Ford, Susan Schnur. Again, I think people who had a huge impact on that kind of library journey that I was on. And when I came back from there, there's obviously expectations once you've been on the SALT project that you had to step into leadership role. And so from there, I kind of went into branch activities until I got to be the branch chair. I was in the year when I was the branch chair-elect back then, Fatima Daris, who's the former IPAS chair, was the chair in the Western Cape. And just before, I think, her term of office ended, she got the job up in Johannesburg, in Pretoria, and then left, and I kind of had to just step into the role and then become the branch chair. But again, in these activities, I met, I think, amazing people and influential people like Tommy Matee, who I think also played a pivotal role in the kind of library leadership in terms of Liasa that I was on. In the SALT journey, I mentioned Ujala, but there were people like Claire Walker, for example, who I think had quite an impact on people, whether you knew it or not at the time. And Claire was always watching while you were on this journey. And so I landed up in EXCO, more because I thought, I could do this thing. But what nobody ever tells you is that it's always harder than it looks. And so I became the national PRO, and it was like, sure, this is really hard. But I had taskmasters like Rachel Morey, like Naomi Haasbrook. And again, I think they played a pivotal role in my Liasa journey and how I saw leadership. Metsi Mulawa, for example, as well, Mandan, Tumbela, etc. And for personal reasons, I stepped away from Liasa once I'd been on that initial exco. But what Liasa had always given me was the sense that I belonged to something that was bigger. And I want to encourage people to think about Liasa like that it provides you with something that is bigger than just your career as a librarian, your role where you are in your institution. It provides you, besides the networking and the people, etc., it provides, and it's always provided for me, an outlet to be a professional. Being that professional librarian, being part of a professional body, it is important for your own sense of who you are as a librarian. And then eventually I slowly started getting back into things. I went to meetings, and one of the meetings I went to was a branch AGM in the Western Cape in 2016, where this idea first came along about Liasa restructuring. Which became a motion that went to Liasa National, that became something that at the time I didn't know, that became something that was first and foremost part of my presidency. When I was the president-elect to Nikki Crowster, that journey started already about restructuring. And when I took over as the president, one of the things I promised membership was that the restructuring will happen in the time that I was president. It took longer than I think I anticipated. So that presidency journey with COVID and everything in between was almost a 6-year journey. But again, I think there are times when you have to step up and you have to be leaders. To be the president is putting yourself forward and saying, I am putting myself into this place where I want to be the leader. And you can't stand back and say, I don't want to do this. And again, I think it's really, it looks easy from a distance. And then once you're in it, it's really harder than you think it's ever going to be. Um, but it was totally worth it. If we can move to the next slide, Masha. Okay, so I think, well, I certainly hope that I've actually done or kind of brought this idea through that for me, leadership is always about people. You can't lead if there's no people. You can't, yes, you lead yourself first and foremost, but you also, to be a leader means to lead people. And so this quote from Richard Osman, for example, it's the people in the end, isn't it? It's always the people. You can move halfway around the world to find your perfect life, move to Australia if you like, but it always comes down to the people you meet. And for me, my leadership journey in Liasa specifically, and even in my work life, is always about the people. It's always about making people feel that they are central to what drives me, that they are central to making the things that are important, that's why I'm doing it. If you move to the next slide, Misha. And again, I think this quote by Maya Angelou is the thing I think that is really always stuck with me, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And so when I was, for example, president-elect, one of the things that I set out to do, and I continued doing it when I was president, was that if you've come to conference enough, you know what I'm talking about. So the presidents would be in the president's office, and people would come, and that's where you would eat, and that's where you would stay during lunchtime, etc. And I always thought, I don't want to be like that. I think it's an important part of who you are when you're in that presidency role. But you are there as the president because people voted for you. People made you the leader, because they said, I have faith in this person to be the leader of this association, of this professional body. And so I felt that one of the things that I wanted to do and do differently was to walk amongst the people. And so I would go lunchtime and I would actually go around and I would actually walk, and it wasn't to have deep, thoughtful conversations always with people. It's being able to walk amongst people and say, how are you? What are you doing? How did you find conference? Is it good for you? Etc. And so one of the things that I think is a drawback for me always is that feeling of being an imposter syndrome. And it's a thing that you've got to get yourself out of when you are in a leadership position. One of the things that I remember when I stepped into that role, I mentioned that particular phrase to Nikki Krauster as we were doing some form of handover meeting one day over breakfast. And she said to me, and it stuck with me, she said to me, hey, do you think nobody else has actually felt like that? You always feel like you're the imposter, but you need to break out of that. And that stuck with me. And so when I became president as well, it was important for me to be with people. I didn't like, probably didn't like is too strong a word, but for example, I was uncomfortable with people just referring to me as president. And so I would always say to people, my name is, um, yes, I'm the president, but first and foremost, that's who I am. And that doesn't change. And I think being part of a leader is to also recognize that it's not, if you go to the next slide, Misha, So again, I think these are things that I think has resonated with me from what other people have said about leadership. And that quote up on top, which is leadership is not a position or a title, it's an action and a mindset. For me, has always been the important thing. It's not about the fact that I am president. Yes, I am in that role and I have to provide the leadership and the guidance, etc. But it's about more than that. It's about who am I as a person, and that's what people needed to see. Um, the quote on the other two quotes, it says every leader is a change leader. If you're not changing anything, then you're not leading. So if we look at Liasa, for example, um, I was adamant that we were going to restructure in this time. It had been such a long conversation. It had been such a long journey, and people were getting tired of talking about the we need to change. But if we didn't actually do the changing, whether it was uncomfortable, whether people liked it or not, um, we were never going to get there. At that point, it was already a 6-year journey, and you could sense that people were kind of not on the same page anymore because they needed to see action. And sometimes it's not always the best action that you would want to achieve, but it is an action and it is something to work from, and that was important. And that last one from Simon's Sinek, which is leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. And again, that idea of, it's not about the title, about being and walking amongst people. That kind of visible leadership for me was always an important thing. Next slide, please. Um, and just kind of last things for people to think about. If you think about your own leadership journey, that quote there, if you accept the call to leadership, you must be willing to be misunderstood, criticized, opposed, accused, even rejected. And that's true of any leadership journey, I think. Not everybody's going to like you all of the time. Some people are never going to like you. Um, but part of leadership is that willingness to be misunderstood, to be criticized, to be opposed, accused, and sometimes even rejected. So I did things in my presidency that not many people were happy about, but there was a reason for why it was done. It wasn't intentional, but it happened. And with my team, we talked about what are we going to do. At some point, I said, I'm willing to step out of the role before the time and just let the process go. And Charlie said to me at the time, we are in this together and we will support you and this is how we're going to do it. And that's important, is to have a team that supports you and says, this is your vision, this is what you want to do, and this is the journey that we'll take with you. And then the quote by Jessica Luna, which is, there's an employee out there who still thinks of you because you were kind to them. Never stop being that leader. In my workplace, that's always the thing that drives me, for example, in that leadership role, is that my staff needs to think of me as a kind person, not a pushover, but a kind person, a person who puts people first, puts them at the center, and is able to say, I empathize, and this is how we're going to do this together. And then the last one on the page is about leadership. We're reading a lot of advice that says a leader shouldn't care what other people think of them, that it only matters what you think about you. Really? We agree that you can't make everybody like you, but there's nothing wrong with striving to be likable. And it's a basic human truth that people do things for people they like. Um, and I think that's something that's always in some way stuck with me. So in my broader workplace, when I started in that role that I had as marketing and research, we were in if you've ever been to Cape Town and you've ever seen the Civic Center, it's a very impersonal building, and we were a very small team in terms of our department. But one of the things I understood back then was that it was important to, in the morning when you come in, to greet people. And then when our offices expanded and we moved out of the city center, we had a much more sprawling building where we were scattered throughout 3 separate buildings or 4 separate buildings. And one of the things I decided to do then, and I did it religiously every morning, was I would put my bags down, and before I opened my laptop, I would walk around and go and greet everybody. Not usually always have a conversation, but to actually go and greet people and say, "Good morning, how are you?" And that was sometimes all it took. But it was important for me for people to see that as part of management, that you're visible. Again, that idea of being visible, that people mustn't just see you when you want something from them, that when you pick up the phone or when you send an email, they remember you because you're that person who actually comes around and you greet every morning. And so when I needed something to be done by someone, there was never a pushback to say, "Nah, I can't do this," etc. Um, because I think people remember that thought of you coming around and engaging with them. And so even in where I am now, which is in a different building, one of the things I do every single morning is I put my bag down and I go around the entire building and I greet everybody. And I think that's important about leading people. Um, you don't always have to be, that whole idea of it's not always the person on top who is the leader. People can be the person who cleans the building and can still be a leader. It's always about, I think, how you treat people, about being kind, about being nice about things. And I think that for me is an important aspect of leadership. And so if we move to the last slide, Mercia. So just a couple of things. I think if you're thinking about your own leadership role, and what I've taken out of my own leadership journey is that it's an important thing to recognize your fears and to overcome them. And one of the things you've got to battle first and foremost is the inner voice that tells you you can't do something. Um, that's an important thing. And then about stepping up, once you've, I think, overcome those fears, is to be able to step into that role, step up, and then the next thing is to take the opportunities, the ones that come your way. It shouldn't be about, now's not the right time. When is actually the right time? Sometimes those opportunities get put in your way because right there and then is where you need to be. And if you don't take that opportunity, it might not come around again. For example, when SALT came along, if I hadn't taken that opportunity, who knew? I might never have thought about being the president of Liasa. But that was where that journey started. Um, Showing up. So one of the things that's in the last 2 years has really resonated with me was something that our executive director told us. We had a leadership session, and there were two things she said. Um, Showing up is a really important part of what happens every day in the workplace. And I've taught this to my staff as well. Sometimes you go to work and you think, I'm really not in the mood for work today. I'm not in the mood for the people that I've got to lead or to work with, etc. Day. But showing up is the first important step. And I think that's for anything, is to show up. Um, and the second thing she said was, what is the weather that you bring with you? And for me, I always am mindful of that when I come to work. Even if on the day I'm not in the mood for work, I've got to think about what is the weather that I bring with me? Because the weather that you bring with you is what's going to influence how people react to you, how people are going to be showing up for that day. And so it's important for me to, even if I am, like today, I said to you, I'm a bit under the weather. um, but it's important for me to show my staff that that's not what I'm all about today. I need to also be present, and I need to be able to encourage them, etc. And then the very last thing, I think, which I've kind of carried throughout this conversation this morning, is I want to leave you with, it's always about the people. Your leadership journey is about people. You're either going to have a legacy that is going to be a bad reflection about you and people, or it's going to be a really good reflection about you and the people that have taken the journey with you. I want to thank you for listening to me, and I hope I've shared something that resonates with you in this leadership journey that I've taken with Liasa and the career that is librarianship. I've always worked in public libraries. I've never worked in any other library sector, but I'm probably going to make enemies when I say this, but I believe that there is nothing like public librarianship. I think public librarianship prepares you for any other sector in the library field. And I will kind of die on that hill. Um, and I think what this profession has given me is it's kind of countless, and I can't really kind of say what it's actually given to me, but I cannot think of another profession that I would have wanted to be in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nazeem. Thank you for sharing your journey. That was a mouthful. Through your presentation, Nazeem, I have learned that leadership is actually about people. It's about influence, and it is shaped by people around you. Thank you very much for sharing that. I will then
Pleasure.
hand over to Chantel, who will be doing the Q&A. Over to you, Chantel.
Thank you, Mersha. If there's anybody that has any questions, now's your opportunity to speak to Nazeem. While you're formulating your questions, I'll just read some of the comments that have come up in the chat. Nazeem, when you were talking about leading people, Lindani said, that's so profound, you cannot lead without people. Madichipes said, I can attest to this, my leadership, Liasa President, very down to earth, accommodating leader to everyone. When I'm at the conference, I know that if I meet you, I will be laughing my heart out with all the compliments you will be giving me. Thanks very much for sharing the Maya Angelou quote with us. It reminds us that we are here because of the people, the Liasa members. Lebohang says, you embody the word kindness. The way you make others feel reflects a heart that genuinely cares. Your gentle strength brings light and comfort wherever you go. Lindani, I need this kind of content and level of leadership skills. Nora Murat, well done, Nazeem. So proud that our paths crossed on your leadership journey, however briefly. Lynn said, well done, Nazeem. Insightful thoughts on leadership. Thank you. Liche, what an inspirational story. You narrated it so well that it was easy to follow. Thank you so much for sharing. Leadership is indeed about people. Any questions from any of the IGBIS members? You can either type them in the chat and I'll read them out, or you can put on your mic and speak to Nazeem directly. Carmen says, thank you, Nazeem, for an insightful and encouraging talk. You are appreciated.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Esther
Hello,
Carney said, oh, sorry, there's someone online. Hi, go ahead.
hello, Nazeem.
Hi, Bernice.
Oh, you still remember? You can still recognize my voice. And
Uh-huh.
I had now a break in my video because my phone died. But I must say, I remember you joined. We were in class together. Actually,
Mm.
you joined. You joined me. I was the one
Mm.
who was in before you, and I
Yeah.
remember how that whole class bypassed me, and then we met. I think we met the first time at Liaza, but I
Mm.
must say that I admire your tenacity, the way your passion for for our for librarianship. And I
Thank
like
you.
the way we said that you didn't want to be in that position of speaking, having to dangers people was in a leadership position, and you rather than not resign, but you applied for another position like the
Mm.
acquisitions,
Mm.
um, which tells me, at least you knew that you the love you for people were were there, but also your love for books, and you knew that you would do better in
Mm.
acquisition. And I think sometimes we as librarians, we just want to go up to leadership,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
but we don't do that. Or by you moving to another one, that didn't say that you were a bad leader.
Mm.
No, for me, it said that you know your strength, you realize your strength and your weakness. So
Yeah.
going to that area, which if I had the opportunity, I would have also gone to that to the opposition
Mm.
one. Really, yeah,
Mm.
if I
Yeah.
could be, because as you know me very well. I I would. That was also my passion, and it's still my passion. You know what? I don't want to talk about my own situation, but I must say that I wish that, and you were mentioning Mr. Epstein,
Mm.
no? I didn't, I applied for a position. I know I've applied for bursaries. I didn't
Mm.
even get an interview. But as you know, those years, they easily, when I mentioned I was disabled,
Mm.
I was easy, my application was always thrown in the bin. That is
Mm.
how the reality was all about. I remember applying to for a position even at city libraries. It was thrown in a bin. I think
Mm.
was only was now after I came onto the TV whatever, when they
Mm.
finally gave me an interview, you know,
Mm.
and then they
Mm.
offered me a position. But then when it came to, then I declined because I wasn't prepared to work on the Sabbath. But it took me so long. And you know what?
Mm.
It just showed me that was for me mostly my disability.
Mm.
And but fortunately for me, I did the B bubble 8. If you
Yeah.
had to, yeah. But don't worry, I am done with Iran. After that, I only got temporary position here. But I decided that wasn't for me. And in
Mm.
mainstream, because, oh well, they threw out the libraries, and now they
Mm.
are suffering the consequences. I am
Yeah.
at Hal- I'm at Heidelberg, I'm at Heidelberg College.
Mm.
I There's no room for movement, but let me just inform you that in 2023 there was a position I couldn't find my email, and then when I told them about can I still be interviewed, it was declined, even though I'm here for 25 years, you know, that type of thing. But I'm now at the point, I must say, I'm at the point where I'm not looking for promotions anymore. I miss you at the at our conference. Why now that you're not present anymore?
Sometimes you must make choices.
Oh, because what I did now to keep myself sane and to keep my love going for libraries, I am now presenting. And
Okay,
you know,
I saw, yes.
yeah, and you know my favorite. And this is what I told people. My favorite used to be information literacy and what is the other one? And it was what? No, it was acquisitions, cataloging. But then disability came over, and I was forced to speak about disability. I need to get a kind of a honors because everybody that spoke there had their masters and their doctorates and our professors. And I come here from the horse's mouth with no with only a master's in motherhood. And
That's fine.
yeah. And I met your wife, and and you are still at the same in the same position. Are you still
Yeah,
in acquisitions?
that's correct. Yeah, I'm still in acquisitions. I love what I
Oh,
do.
uh, I think your my new my new boss is worked with you.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways,
Mm,
I enjoyed your your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Berenice. There are some more comments here from Esther. Thank you, Nazeem. I'm inspired by your talk this morning, especially the which weather I am bringing to work. I like that as well. Lindy says, thank you so much for an inspiring talk and sharing your journey with us, Nazeem. All of the best for the rest of your
Pleasure.
career as a librarian and a leader. Brachta said, thank you for a very encouraging talk. I learned a lot, especially reminding us that this is really all about the people and that everyone placed in your life has a lesson to teach us. I thought it a little heartbreaking that you don't like cataloging. Thank you and hope you feel better soon.
I've come to learn to love cataloging.
That's good. That's good. Clearly, we all do. Okay, if there are no more comments, I'll commence with a closing. We want to thank you, Nazeem, for availing yourself to come and share your knowledge and your experience with us IGBIS members here today. We thank you for an informative and exciting presentation. I hope that everyone is feeling motivated and inspired for their own leadership journeys. I want to thank also all the IGMIS members for their loyalty in attending these webinars that we host. And sorry, before I completely sign off, Lindani has asked how, oh, I see you've answered. Thank you very much, Nazeem. You've given your email address for that. Thank you. I share your passion too for public libraries. I spent the first 19 years of my career in public libraries, and I find it's a very grounding experience in all the different aspects of librarianship for one's continued journey. And yeah, thank you. It was very exciting. I loved hearing about your journey and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so